The night Ifeoma met the man who would change her life forever, the air in Lagos smelled of rain and gasoline. The city was alive, cars honking, street vendors shouting, neon lights flickering against damp pavement. She was 21, beautiful in a way that made men turn their heads, but restless in a way that made her dangerous. She had come to Lagos for university, leaving behind her small town in Anambra where life was predictable, where her father's stern voice ruled their home and her mother's tired hands told stories of sacrifice. But Lagos was different. It pulsed with energy, with possibility. And that night, in the dim glow of a high-end lounge on Victoria Island, she met the man who would become her secret. His name was Anthony. He was everything her father warned her about, wealthy, confident, and unattached. He wore power like a second skin, the kind of man who had never been told no in his life. He saw Ifeoma across the room, his gaze locking onto her like a hunter spotting prey. And Ifeoma, despite everything she had been taught, let herself be caught. Their affair was intense, reckless. Anthony took her to places she had only seen in magazines, private beach houses, rooftop dinners overlooking the city, whispered conversations in dark corridors of luxury hotels. He made her feel alive, untouchable. But deep down, she knew the truth, she was a secret. "Marry me," she had whispered once, wrapped in silk sheets, his fingers tracing patterns on her skin. He had laughed, not cruelly, but with the certainty of a man who knew his own limits. "You know I can't. My family." His family. The invisible line that separated their worlds. So Ifeoma played her part, pretending it didn't hurt when he left after midnight, pretending she wasn't waiting for a promise he would never make. Until the night everything changed. She was late. 2 weeks. Then 3. Then the test in a tiny pharmacy bathroom, staring at 2 pink lines that sealed her fate. When she told Anthony, his reaction was everything she feared. Silence. Then a deep sigh. "You have to take care of it." Her stomach turned. "You mean?" He didn't say the word, but she saw it in his eyes. "I can't," she whispered. A muscle in his jaw twitched. "Then I can't help you." And just like that, the illusion shattered. She left that night, rain soaking through her dress as she walked through the empty streets, her world crumbling around her. She thought about going home, but she knew what awaited her there: disgrace, disappointment. Then came Chijioke. Ifeoma met Chijioke through a mutual friend, months after Anthony disappeared from her life. By then, she had learned to mask her pain, to carry her secret like a locked box in her chest. Chijioke was different, simple, hardworking, the kind of man who found joy in small things. He wasn't rich like Anthony, but he was kind, dependable. And most importantly, he loved her. When he proposed, she said yes. Not out of love, but out of necessity. By then, her belly had started to show, and whispers followed her like shadows. Chijioke never questioned it when she claimed the pregnancy was premature, that the baby had simply arrived earlier than expected. He held her hand in the hospital, tears in his eyes as he cradled a child that was never his. Years passed. 2 more children followed. And Ifeoma, despite everything, found a kind of happiness in their small home in Onitsha. But secrets have a way of rotting beneath the surface, and every time she looked at her children, their unfamiliar features, their mannerisms that mirrored a man she had tried to forget, guilt strangled her like a noose. She told herself Chijioke would never find out. She was wrong. The first cracks in the foundation of her lie appeared on a Sunday afternoon. Chijioke was in the backyard, rinsing his hands after repairing a broken chair, when he saw Kamsi, their eldest, standing by the mango tree. The boy was staring at something in his hands, a pocket mirror Ifeoma often carried in her bag. "Kamsi," Chijioke called, wiping his hands on his trousers. "What are you looking at?" Kamsi hesitated, then turned the mirror toward his father. "Papa, why don't I look like you?" The question hit Chijioke like a fist to the chest. He let out a small chuckle, the kind that masked discomfort. "What do you mean?" Kamsi frowned. "My eyes. They are brown. Yours are dark. And my skin, It's lighter than Somto's. People say I look different. Chijioke crouched down, placing a firm hand on his son's shoulder. You look like your mother's side of the family. Kamsi nodded slowly, but Chijioke saw the doubt still lingering in his eyes. It wasn't the first time someone had pointed out the differences, but it was the first time his son had questioned it himself. That night, as Ifeoma lay beside him, Chijioke stared at the ceiling, his mind unraveling memories he had ignored for years. The whispers in the market. The knowing looks from nosy neighbors. The way Ifeoma always seemed uneasy when their children were around too many people. And those city trips. The next morning, he made a decision. He would follow her. The journey to Lagos. Ifeoma had been careful for years. She never traveled at the same time every year. She never stayed too long. She always made sure her alibi was airtight, visiting her aging parents, checking on an old aunt. Chijioke never questioned her, because why would he? She had been a loyal wife, a good mother. But this time, he followed her. He took the next bus to Lagos, keeping his distance as she made her way through the city like she belonged there. She didn't go to her parents' house. Instead, she walked into a gated estate, one of those places where men like Chijioke were not meant to enter without permission. He found a spot near the gate and waited. Minutes later, a man stepped out. Tall. Light-skinned. Dressed in a crisp white shirt and expensive wristwatch. The kind of man who had never known the struggle of a trader's life. Anthony. Chijioke watched as Ifeoma reached him. The way her face softened. The way the man touched her, familiar, possessive. And then, 3 children ran out of the house, their laughter filling the air. His children. His blood. Or so he had believed. His hands trembled. A roaring sound filled his ears. Ifeoma knelt, hugging the children, her voice warm and full of a love she had never shown in Onitsha. Then he heard her say it. Mommy is here. How is Daddy? Daddy. The man laughed, kissing her forehead. They missed you. It's not easy raising them alone here while you keep up your other life. Chijioke staggered back. His world crumbled. The confrontation. He waited until nightfall, until Ifeoma finally emerged. When she stepped onto the street, he called her name. She froze. Slowly, she turned, her face draining of color. Chijioke. What are you doing here? He stepped forward, his voice eerily calm. I should be asking you that. Tears welled in her eyes. I can explain. Explain what? That my children are not mine. That I've spent over a decade raising another man's blood. Her lips quivered. I never meant to hurt you. But you did. She sank to her knees, sobbing. I was young. I was scared. I didn't know what else to do. And now? His voice cracked. Do you love him? She looked up, and that was when he saw it, the hesitation. The truth. Not a lie. Not an excuse. The answer was written all over her face. She did. A sharp pain tore through Chijioke's chest. He wanted to scream, to break something, but he did nothing. Just turned and walked away. The next morning, Ifeoma returned to Onitsha. But Chijioke was gone. And her children, innocent, unaware, would one day learn the truth of their mother's betrayal. Epilogue. Somewhere in a quiet town, far from the noise of Lagos, a man named Chijioke started anew. The weight of betrayal never left him. But some wounds, he learned, were never meant to heal.